There's moments in sports and life, and it's true with hockey or anything else, where you're a part of something special. When I played in the Calder Cup Finals 2 years in a row, I remember looking Tyler Bertuzzi in the eye after a whistle, and he'd just crash the net or slash me or something. We looked at each other, and the fire of competition was right there between us, and we both smiled, right? In a moment, we probably should have slashed each other's hands off. We both smiled at one another.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of The Drop. I'm Arda Öcal. I am flying solo today on this edition. Greg Wyshynski, of course, is off because he just had a child. That seems like a fair excuse not to go to work. Take as much time as you need, buddy. You know we love you. We will welcome you with open arms when you return. In the meantime and in between time, we're still doing shows every Tuesday and Friday. You can find us wherever you get your audio podcasts as well. The NHL on ESPN on YouTube. Now, this is going to be a stacked show. A lot of news has dropped in the last few days in the NHL. I will give you my winners and losers for those news items. We will get to that in a second as well. It is Royal Rumble week. If you are a pro wrestling fan, this is one of the most fun weeks of the year. The Royal Rumble is typically people's favorite match of the year. It's a lot of fun. We bring on former NHL goaltender Mike McKenna as our pro wrestling analyst. A longtime pro wrestling fan. We get to chop it up and talk a little WWE. That will be a lot of fun as well. But I want to start with this shirt that I'm wearing right here. It is, as you can see, a collaboration. You know I love my hockey and Star Wars. This was from the Florida Panthers. Star Wars night happened a few days ago, and they did a great job. Here is a better look at it right here. Is it AT-AT or at? Throw that in the comments. I know it's a debate that Star Wars fans always have. All I know is that this shirt is absolutely dope. It's gorgeous. Shout out to the creatives over in the Florida Panthers front office for doing such a great job, because I feel like every idea at this point, like it's bobbleheads, shirts, jerseys, Star Wars nights have been happening for years in the NHL and sports, period, right? So to keep things fresh, to try and integrate, you really got to think on it. So when you see something like this is very nice, very well done by the Florida Panthers. So want to give them some props. This showed up at my door a few days ago. So thank you very much to the Florida Panthers, to Adeline and the entire team over there for this wonderful gift. So big fan of hockey and Star Wars, as I said. So I try to track them all. There are a few that are happening across the NHL this season, a few more left to go, and I'm sure that there will be some fun collaborations across those as well with the teams. Okay, let's get to the big news. Winners and losers. Number one, new head coach for the New York Islanders, Patrick Roy, back in the NHL. Coached the Colorado Avalanche, of course. Was the coach long time with the Quebec Ramparts, two-time Memorial Cup winner. Of course, won the Stanley Cup 4 times as a goalie with the Montreal Canadiens and the Avs. But now he is back with the New York Islanders. He won his first game in overtime, 3-2 over the Dallas Stars. What a shakeup. Lane Lambert out, Patrick Roy in. So, winner for me, the element of surprise, not necessarily the fact that the New York Islanders were going to make a coaching change. I think a lot of people were expecting some sort of shakeup. So the fact that a coaching change occurred for the Islanders is not the surprising part. Patrick Roy had also previously been a name that people were saying could possibly return as a coach in the NHL. But not recently. Like, his name was not out there as much as it used to be. So this sort of felt, when you saw the news, Lane Lambert, and obviously it was a combined piece of news that happened on a random, I think it was a Saturday afternoon. It was like Lane Lambert out, Patrick Roy in. And when that dropped, it almost felt like, by God, that's Patty Roy's music. Like, it just came out of nowhere. Like, wow, Patrick Roy is the one that's replacing Lane Lambert, that's joining the New York Islanders. So it was more the element of surprise that it was Patrick Roy, not necessarily because it's surprising that he's back in the NHL in any certain way. He's definitely created an impressive resume, like I said, with the Ramparts and the Q, 2 Memorial Cup wins, and he does have the NHL experience with the Avs as well. But more so the fact that it was quiet on the Patrick Roy NHL coaching front, at least among hockey circles and what was being publicly reported and posted, etc. So I would say the element of surprise is a win there. Winner, the Montreal Canadiens. What do I mean by that? So general manager Lou Lamoriello has a history of tapping into the Montreal Canadiens' legacy as it pertains to his head coaches, particularly with the New Jersey Devils. Names like Larry Robinson and Jacques Lemaire and Pat Burns, who achieved any sort of success with the Montreal Canadiens, big and small, ended up becoming coaches with the New Jersey Devils and ended up getting success with the New Jersey Devils. And now Patrick Roy, who of course won 2 Stanley Cups that first year as a rookie in 1986 and then again in 1993, 2 stellar playoff years for Patrick Roy, winning Stanley Cups. Now he becomes the 4th in that line, but now the newest head coach hired by GM Lou Lamoriello to lead a Lou-led team, and that is the New York Islanders. So that lineage continues. Obviously, there is a winning tradition or something that has been identified by Lou, that if you were a part of those eras, that caliber of winning, maybe something that is taught as part of the organization, wanted to bring that to the Islanders. And you could already see the fingerprints as Patrick Roy coaches in practice and in games. And that leads me to my first loser, and that is silence. If you were hoping for somebody that was just going to remain mouth shut behind the bench, you got the wrong guy. Patrick Roy, by all accounts, by people who were covering the team, you could see it on the beat by the tweets from the beat reporters. He was pretty loud behind the bench, and you could hear him levels up at UBS Arena. It's pretty awesome, actually. I love it. And if you saw some of the video from his first practice, he was very vocal. He was not shy, and that's his style, right? Like, this is not new. It's just jarring in a way, perhaps for some Islanders fans that are seeing this for the first time as compared to previous iterations. It's definitely a different vibe for sure. So, and this could be exactly what the Islanders need, right? And Patrick Roy is setting the tone early, creating a very strong first impression. And he even mentioned that in the post-game press conference that he had. It was 15 minutes, spoke in English and French, equal amounts of time, really. And he taught one of the first French questions that he received. He talked about how he sought counsel from Jacques Lemaire, who also works in the Islanders organization, and said, "Hey, like Jacques Lemaire told him, one of the things you should really think about is, your first speech to the team is a very important one. Create that strong first impression." And you can tell that Patrick Roy has certainly done that. And there's a lot of it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here long term. But in terms of immediate impact, you saw him stopping drills. You saw him fine tuning and changing things. He wasn't even using a whistle in practice. He was just whistling himself. He was so loud. Like the vibe is absolutely there. So and here's the other thing. I like this from a media perspective. As somebody who is constantly looking for hockey content to cover, we always talk about people like Torts, like quotable, big quotes, big personalities, whatever the case may be. Patrick Roy is going to fall into that category as well. There's always going to be something interesting to talk about as it pertains to Patrick Roy. So for anyone creating hockey content or anyone covering the sport of hockey in that hockey bubble, Patrick Roy is going to be a net positive from that point of view. So this is great from our angle. Another loser is timing with a question mark. And I would be very clear on this. I'm not saying that the timing of this was bad. What I'm getting at when I make timing a loser is a lot of people were questioning, did this happen too late? Maybe this could have happened sooner. My question is, like right now, the Islanders are in the thick of a wild card spot, right? Like they're in this battle. But the thing is, the Eastern Conference is an absolute gauntlet. There are a lot of strong teams that is creating, and this is not new to this season. Like we saw this in the last couple of seasons, at least. The Eastern Conference is very, very middle heavy in the sense that there are several teams that you could see occupy a wild card spot. And that will mean that some teams will be heartbroken that have maybe been playoff teams for the last several years that may not make the playoffs this year because of the level of competition that exists at that tier in the Eastern Conference, and the Islanders certainly fall in that category right now. Now, there is still almost a half a season to go, and I think they're 2 points out as I record this. So, to say timing is almost a moot point because they're essentially in the wild card hunt very firmly right now. And it would take, a series of losing streaks and losing to Eastern Conference teams time and time again. But every single game is going to be important. Every single regulation win against an Eastern Conference team is going to be important from here on out. So, whether it's this week, next month, whatever the case may be, we will be looking at the standings very frequently, and so that's the lens in which I am putting timing as a loser in this particular situation for the New York Islanders and Patrick Roy. Item number 2, Corey Perry reportedly will be joining the Edmonton Oilers. This comes from our colleague Emily Kaplan reporting on Sunday. Corey Perry has agreed to a 1-year contract with the Edmonton Oilers. This was also reported by multiple media outlets per ESPN and Emily. The deal to finish the season will include performance bonuses and is prorated to the league minimum. Winner, depth, Corey Perry was cleared to join an NHL team after what went down with the Chicago Blackhawks, which has been spoken about on this show in the past. So according to the reporting here, he's joining the Edmonton Oilers, and boy, does that add a great offensive depth piece. And by the way, somebody that has a very recent track record, I should say, very recent history of making the Stanley Cup final, helping teams make the Stanley Cup final, 3 different teams, even though he unfortunately wasn't able to win the Stanley Cup in those instances. He did, of course, with Anaheim in the mid-2000s, but 3 consecutive years, Montreal, Dallas, and Tampa, not in that order, but those 3 years, those 3 teams, he made the Stanley Cup final. And now with the Edmonton Oilers, that could make a 4th in recent memory, because the Oilers, as they stand right now, franchise record, winning streak, they look back to be firing on all cylinders. Connor McDavid is woken up from his start of the season slumber and is already battling in the Art Ross Trophy race and the Hart Trophy race. And now you have a great secondary offensive depth piece with Corey Perry, a great overall addition there for a team that clearly wants to win now. And as Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid have said, cup or bust. And that's certainly still the sentiment in the city of Edmonton. Loser, completion. I say this as a completionist, somebody who plays a video game and needs to get it to 100% in order to be able to move on. Or if I start a TV series or a movie, I have to see it through. Look no further than Dexter. I wish I stopped after season 4. Are the Oilers done after acquiring Corey Perry? Do they need a goaltender? Do they need more defensive pieces? Do they need another offensive depth piece? There will still be questions. To me, and this is going to be a theme for this show, for this episode, I will always, always look at goaltending. To me, that is still the most important position. And I know that we have recent examples. Look no further than the Vegas Golden Knights and the Colorado Avalanche. They did not have the strongest goaltenders in the league. They still won the Stanley Cup. But those goaltenders were performing very well, including Adin Hill, who, quite frankly, was one of the most important reasons the Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup, because he was lights out during the whole playoffs. And so not that a lot of people predicted that or expected that going into the postseason last season. But still, I wonder about the Oilers and whether they will make a move between the pipes before the trade deadline. And if you ask a lot of Oilers fans, they would love nothing more than to see something like that. So that remains to be seen whether we are done with the buying for the Oilers for the trade deadline as the trade deadline approaches. Winner, Canada, the entire country. Why do I say this? A Canadian hockey team has not won the Stanley Cup since 1993, the Montreal Canadiens. I mentioned that earlier. The Canadian hockey teams have also rarely made the Stanley Cup final since. It has been few and far between that a Canadian hockey team has made it to the dance. And obviously, it's been decades since they've won the Stanley Cup. But with the addition of Corey Perry to the Edmonton Oilers and other Canadian teams that are at the top of the league, look no further than the Winnipeg Jets. This is a year where you really look, the Vancouver Canucks, the Winnipeg Jets, the Oilers, even throw the Leafs in there, even though they don't seem as strong as they did last year and previous years, but still, you look at these teams and say, maybe this is the year that we might see a Canadian team face a Canadian team in the final again, where we would be guaranteed a Canadian Stanley Cup champion. So for me, this move signals just an overall win for the country of Canada, especially those who really want to see a Canadian team win a Stanley Cup. But a city that I mentioned earlier, a loser would be Toronto, or any team looking for secondary scoring or more of these proven Stanley Cup playoff run contender, we know what it takes to win kind of players. And no doubt at all, Corey Perry is absolutely that. He knows what it takes to win. He's won, and he's made it to the dance several times, 3 years in a row with different teams. He knows what it takes to win. And many teams in the NHL could use players like that have that experience, that have that acumen, that know how to dig deep and know what to say in the locker rooms when things get tough. And so it definitely for Toronto, who might be looking for secondary scoring, Corey Perry off the market limits those options. Item number 3, the All-Star Captains and Celebrities have been announced. Team Blue, Austin Matthews, Assistant Captain Morgan Riley will be joined by Justin Bieber. Team White, Connor McDavid, Assistant Captain Leon Draisaitl will be joined by Will Arnett. Team Yellow, Nathan McKinnon, Assistant Captain Cale Makar will be joined by Tate McRae. And Team Red, Jack and Quinn Hughes, co-captains, will be joined by Michael Bublé. Winner, Will Arnett. Full stop. He is stealing the show. The whole selection draft, we will be calling it the Will Arnett draft, because that guy, Gob Bluth, is going to steal the entire freaking thing. He is going to be the absolute best part of the show. He's going to be hilarious. He might even do magic tricks on stage. I mean, who knows? All I know is that Will Arnett is going to be the guy that I'm keeping my eyes on, because I really think that he's going to be the one that we're talking about when it's all said and done. Winner, trades. I want to see a trade happen at this draft on Thursday night of All-Star Weekend, and I think it's going to happen. I don't even think the assistant captains and the captains will remain on their teams when it's all said and done. Who knows? Maybe Jack will throw his brother under the bus and trade for Leon Draisaitl. We don't know. It would be hilarious television. So I'm just putting it out there in the universe that I hope the captains and the celebrities have a little fun, decide, you know what, let's make some trades. Why not? We can do whatever we want. It's a blank canvas, so let's take advantage of it. Loser, the rest of the All-Star festivities. Why do I say this? Not because I'm hating on the All-Star game or I'm hating on the skills competition. I actually think they're going to be a lot of fun this year. What I'm saying is I think that this is going to be the best event of the weekend. I think that we're starting off very strong. I think that the draft is going to be overall extremely fun. And I think that this has the potential to be the most memorable part of the weekend with the most quotes and the most laughs and the most fun overall. So that's why I say the rest of the All-Star festivities are a loser in this particular scenario. Another loser, CM Punk. Why am I referencing a WWE superstar as a loser here? The reason being, I had been standing this whole idea of CM Punk being a celebrity captain at the All-Star game with Connor Bedard, of course, and Connor Bedard is out with a broken jaw surgery, so totally understand that he's not a celebrity captain here. He may have been if he wasn't injured. I would guess so, and maybe CM Punk was going to be a celebrity tag team partner in this situation, but I think CM Punk would have been a great addition here. He is a massive hockey fan. He is a very charismatic guy. So I guess what I'll say here is I hope overall at a future event like this, we see CM Punk integrated, participating, something to that effect. Keeping it with the pro wrestling theme, the Royal Rumble, the 2024 edition, is going to be happening this weekend, and we decided that would be a great time to bring on friend of the show, former NHL goaltender, pro wrestling fan enthusiast, and now analyst, at least on this show, Mike McKenna. All right, the Royal Rumble is just around the corner, and we thought, you know what, this would be a fantastic time to bring on a good friend of the show. First time on the show, though, former NHL goalie and now pro wrestling analyst, official to the resume, like pro wrestling analyst, as we're calling you right here on the show, on the drop. Mike McKenna joining us. Mike, thanks for making time for us and breaking down the wrestling action that we're going to get this weekend, man.
Oh, man. Thanks, Arda. This is awesome. I tell you what, I've been a paid food critic when I played in Portland, Maine. I've done analysis work on the NHL. I've written about IndyCar racing, but I finally get to add another passion in pro wrestling, and especially WWE. And with the Rumble coming up, this is perfect. Thank you.
That is an impressive resume. Very random, too, like a whole bunch of different stuff going on.
Oh, there's a whole lot of layers to this onion, brother. I mean, I could go through all my interests that, dude, when I was a kid, I wrote all my term papers like on either like snakes or tornadoes, and and I love heavy
Tell me
metal.
you didn't watch the WWF in 1990 without telling me you watched the WWF in 1990, right? Jake the Snake, Texas Tornado. Exactly. I love it.
Well, and thinking about that moment, right? Snake wheels out the King Cobra, and it bites Macho Man. Like when you're a kid, you're watching this, and you're just going, "Oh my God, this is happening," And I'm thinking Macho's done for. He's not going to sell another Slim Jim. Yes, that was what captivated me as a young man. It was awesome.
I love it. I can already tell this is going to be the best conversation ever. I have one question for you, sort of hockey, pro wrestling adjacent, because I've always been curious about this before we dive into the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania and fantasy booking. Yep. We always hear stories of college football players, NFL players, former Division I college athletes, transition to pro wrestling, right?
Yep.
We do hear of like people, especially if they're oftentimes Canadian. Hey, I played some hockey growing up, but I didn't make it very far. Then I discovered pro wrestling, and I made a good career for myself. Like Christian Cage is a good example. He was a goaltender when he was growing up.
Yeah.
Why do you think that people that make the NHL, we don't often hear the story of a former NHL player transitions to a career in pro wrestling?
It's tough, man. And it should happen more often. Like, think of some of the pugilists we had that would have been so good at pro wrestling. I think part of it's because hockey has there's a longevity to your career in hockey. Most players can play until they're 30, 35. Even if you're banging around the minors, like, you can still make a good living in hockey. So like football, where are you going to go if you don't make the NFL? Like, are you going to go play in Canada? Maybe. Like, they're done by like 25-6 if you're not, don't make the cut. Other sports kind of the same way. College is the top unless you make it to the very top echelon of it. So we have the personalities in hockey. We've got people who are strong enough, tough enough, big enough, all those things. It's kind of been disappointing because I've actually sat in on meetings when I was on the exec board for the Professional Hockey Players Association, which is the minor league union. We had people actively trying to recruit hockey players. Like, we had that connection. We had a person working with the PHBA who had worked with WWE before, and we didn't have any takers, which shocked me. I think of Steve McIntyre, right? He's a firefighter now. Remember Steve McIntyre from the NHL? Just an absolute monster, right? He would have been incredible in the ring. And a guy like Eric Nielsen, who was Sidney Crosby's protector in the Quebec League and then grinded out a career in the minors. This guy, I've seen this guy do Ric Flair promos, okay? Spot on, bang on. He'd be calling season ticket holders, outgoing. This guy would have been able to cut a promo like no one else. But we haven't had any takers. And again, I think it's because we beat our bodies up so bad until 30, 32, 35 that you don't want to go into another discipline where you're going to continually feel that strain on your body when you're done.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's definitely not the toughness part of it. Like, even the image of like missing a couple teeth, like pro wrestling fans would love that.
Oh, and there's so many players that could instantly fill that void.
Yeah.
Like Cam Jansen's a buddy of mine. We grew up in St. Louis together.
Yes.
Cam could be like Goldberg 2.0. Just go in and pile, just boom, jackhammer somebody. It's done in 30 seconds,
God. You can think of so many. George Larac would be a great choice. Like, yeah, there's so many guys that you're like, just instantly like, yeah, this guy could be a good pro wrestler.
Yeah. So I'm actually disappointed by it because I do think we'd have a built-in intrigue to it, I mean, and Pat McAfee can go do wrestling. Like, he's a serviceable wrestler with some training.
Oh, absolutely.
People can do this stuff. But you got to really want to. And I've only met some people in hockey that are really into the pro wrestling side, right? Like, we've got a group chat that I'll disclose it. I mean, like, I've got friends that are, one's an NHL goalie coach, another's a head coach in the ECHL, one's a former American League ref. We have a group chat about wrestling, and
like,
I know there's a head coach.
Wrestling fans.
You're right. And we've been desperately trying to get Bruce Boudreau in the chat, but we're not sure how to approach that, So they're out there, but there's not as many.
I want to see Bruce Boudreau be a mouthpiece for some wrestler down the line. That'd be great. Just for one match, maybe a Kevin Owens or something. Like, that'd be hilarious.
I wonder if there haven't been talks about that. Because, I remember a couple months back, Bruce walked in and did kind of
give the pep talk. They did like a backstage thing. Yeah.
And KO together. And man, he was so good at it, and his personality. He'd be a great guest manager for maybe just if they were working, they were working an angle for maybe a month or something with Bruce, right? It would just, God, it'd be awesome.
So you mentioned serviceable wrestlers. I think he's much more than serviceable. I think he's excellent. Logan Paul facing Kevin Owens at the Royal Rumble in Tampa this weekend, January 27th. Who's going to win the Royal Rumble, Mike?
Has there ever been a more wide open year? There's so many big names in this Rumble, and it makes it so hard to handicap it. I think Cody's going to win it again. And it's tough for me because here's the thing. Cody Rhodes is an unbelievable wrestler, but he's not my favorite at all. Okay. Like, and this is what I love about wrestling. You can just absolutely hate somebody and it's okay. Right? Like, I can't stand Cody Rhodes, but I love watching him as a wrestler. I'm sure, as a human, we'd be, right? You just get on, but it's the character work, right? And I don't know. I feel like he's the guy that's set up no matter how much, you got Punk in the mix, but what if Punk decides, what if Punk wins it and then he doesn't go after Roman? Does he go after Rollins if he's healthy? Like, all these things, I can't pick it because of the intrigue factor. And who's your dark horse, right? Like, what if Gunther comes in and just cleans the table?
Yeah.
Like, what if The Rock comes flying in and takes it? Like, it's just wide open to me. But I just have this gut feeling that Cody's going to be the guy again, and then he's going to finally get his shot. But I don't know how that factors in with The Rock. I can't figure that out against Roman.
That is such a great point, right? Because this year, it really feels like there's so many outside factors that are determining what the matches could be, right? Like, how important is the Roman Reigns streak? Because he's so close to Hogan, right? Like that, he can surpass Hogan for number of days as champion in one reign. I think it's September, right? So, like, how important is that in history, right? Like, do we need to get to that point? And that would mean that would probably change the course of WrestleMania, right?
Yeah, and what's hard about this is, honestly, I'm sick of Roman being champion. I have no other way to say it. I'm done with it. Like, I need a chaos factor, and I need something new to give me some juice with this, because like, COVID screwed everything up, right? Like, you kind of were mixing and matching, and it made sense how it was working. And I live for the chaos factor of wrestling, you know? Like, I was rooting so hard for Jinder Mahal to beat Rollins. And Rollins is one of my absolute favorite wrestlers. I show up, I sing the song, whoa, I do it all. But I wanted that chaos factor, right? Like, Jinder surprised everybody 7 years ago. What if he did it again? You know, just a total curveball.
You were the one guy cheering when he came back on Raw. He was the advertised world champion. Mike Stanley. Yeah.
I'm cheering my head off, dude. I'm like, this is perfect. And even though everybody knew it was a setup for something else, I was amped about it, because I actually really I love that antagonistic character that Jinder portrayed, right?
Yeah,
I loved when
totally.
Volkov would come out and sing the Russian national anthem. Like, the works back then were so strong in the 80s that were just, you could get pure hatred out of a crowd for that. If you play the patriotic side, why? Dude, Hacksaw Duggan. Okay, my father-in-law went to high school with Duggan in Glens Falls, right? His whole shtick, USA, oh, a flag and a 2x4. Unbelievable shtick. But anyway, I'm getting off track here. I think that Hogan's record, I mean, Hogan's the guy, straight up. Like, are we going to say Roman Reigns is the greatest of all time, bar none, hands down? Because if he passes Hogan in terms of days as champion, to me, that's a true passing of the torch to say this is the guy who's been the mark of everybody, in all time. In my heart of hearts, I don't think WWE wants to go there. I don't. That's my guess. But Roman is a deserving champion, as much as I still want to see somebody beat the wheels off of him.
And that makes it so complicated for Mania. Yeah. Like, to me, if the streak matters, then have Rock and Roman at Mania and have Roman win. Because, like, the other thing is, like, that match doesn't need a title. Like, that's the head of the table match. It just needs to
happen. That match needs to happen.
That's the bloodline head of the table match. Like, that's like the lineage, the family at stake, right? It doesn't need a championship.
No, it's the Lannisters stepping up and deciding who's going to rule on the Iron Throne, man. It has to happen.
Exactly. I've heard a triple threat situation with Rock, Roman, and Cody. I don't like that at all. Nope, I am not a fan. Boat. I want singles match. Give me one or the other. I know that it's murky and complicated, but get me to just one of those matches.
I agree. Sure. There's a time and place for triple threats, for 4-person battles, and I'm trying to think of last time Rhea Ripley had a great fatal 4-way, and I can't remember who was against to retain the belt, and that was a great match. And I can't remember when that one was. I lose track of the pay-per-views, but there's a time and a place for those. But when you've got two absolute giants like a Roman and Rock, I can imagine throwing, and no shade to anybody here, but imagine throwing LA Knight in the mix there, or throwing Orton in the mix. Like, it just wouldn't feel right. That's what I'm about, the emotion of it. You know what I mean? That has to be mano a mano, man on man, one-on-one. Has to. Roman, Rock. No question. Everybody wants it. Okay. And you have to give, at some point, you got to give the fans what they want, man. You
Sure.
have to. Like, that's what this is about. Like, that's why Lawrence Taylor could walk in and headline stuff. You know what I mean? So I would love to see them go one-on-one just for the thrill factor of it. I wonder what The Rock is going to look like in the ring, though. You know,
Yeah, he
is
was
he gonna,
he was pretty rough shape against or on Raw, even just that one spot with Jinder, right?
yeah, I mean, at that age, like, can he have the energy that makes it feel believable and not just a tribute act? You know, like, how
Right,
do you
right.
pace that match out? Like what they did with Austin and KO in Texas. Remember that match when Steve Austin came
Terrific.
back? And it was great because they let the pacing of it play out. Austin was ready for it. They slowed it down. But The Rock's not really a slow down guy, right? He's a brutal match type of guy, right? Drop an elbow, big, strong. So I'm curious to see how that could play out because we
To
know
your
Roman will be at
point,
the top of his game.
yeah, and to your point though, like KO drove that match, similar to how
Yeah,
Sami Zayn drove the match with Johnny Knoxville, right? Like I
sure.
know I can carry this match and make it entertaining. Here's what you need to do in this situation, and maybe that's what would happen. Maybe that's why the triple threat happens, not
Mm-hmm.
for the marquee reasons, but we know that Cody can carry the match, right?
Yeah. No,
Because he's the regular guy, so it's like if we need an entertaining match for a WrestleMania main event, we know we can rely on Cody to present that, even though that's not the ideal storyline perspective, I guess.
Cody will make anybody look good in the ring. Rollins will
Yes,
make anybody look good in the ring. You know, like, and again, like, this is what I love about it. I hate Cody Rhodes. I just don't like this guy. Man, I appreciate what he does in the ring so much. He's so good. So good.
absolutely.
But I don't like that added factor. You know, like when I have triple threat matches, when I'm watching a triple threat that I find intriguing, you know, I want to see Sheamus and McIntyre and Gunther. You know, like I don't want to see you just toss in a Tozawa or something for the comedy factor, right? Like it's got to
Sure.
be focused and have a purpose for it. So yeah, don't give me Cody. Give me Cody at SummerSlam if you're going to do it. If you have to, if he doesn't win it, like take it down, kick it down one more. Because whether it's Mania or SummerSlam, these are your prime times to get the belts to change. Yeah, and I do. I mean, I always wonder as well. Like, are they going to run out? You know, two men's main events as the two headliners as well, right? Because the
Right.
women's side is. I mean, for me, man, I love the women just as much as the men. I don't know why anybody wouldn't at this stage when you think of how good that talent is, knowing you got. I mean, Becky's absolute top of her game. Bianca, same way. You've got that whole damage control faction that's just aching to be split up into a couple of different groups. Like, I don't know. It does feel like the men's side has more momentum right now than the women's to headline.
Who's winning the women's Royal Rumble?
It's not going to be Nia Jax. At some point, she's going to go over the top rope with 18 people helping her over. It's
Yeah.
inevitable.
Does she get the Diesel spot where she eliminates like 12 people before that though? You know what I mean?
I think
Like
so.
she's in the ring like this, like, come on, who's next? Like, let's go. Yeah.
She'll be in there hamming it up, acting like she's better than everybody else. And then the big juice behind throwing her out is going to be Jade Cargill. And this is going to be the moment where
Ooh.
here comes Mrs. Muscles. Dude, Jade's going to come in there and toss. And there'll be help, but this is going to be like her moment where she arrives on the scene, I think. And that's where it's hard to pick it, like, right, like Bailey's probably a good bet to win, but I'd like a curveball for the women, and I'm not sure it's easy to pick. Like I don't think Jade would just come in and win right off the bat. I mean, I could see Liv Morgan showing up and winning this thing, right? If she comes back, that's one that I think is believable. Becky's always believable. Becky's incredible.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be Bailey, Becky. Liv's got a good chance at it. Jade. I mean, they may do it with Jade, but I don't like always coming back and winning, right? Like Edge did. Edge comes back and wins. Cody's back. He wins. Like at some point you got to break that up.
Yeah. You don't need the return victory. And Jade, with that, like your idea there, imagine her like taking 13 people to eliminate Nia Jax. Imagine her slamming Nia Jax, like picking her up, showing the
Right.
strength and slamming her over the top rope. That's the moment you need. You don't need her to win the Rumble. That moment right there will solidify her as a player, you know? So that's
a lot like when Rhea, Rhea gets called up and she ends up in the final 3 of the Rumble a couple of years. It was her, Charlotte, and Bianca.
Bianca, I think.
I think it was those 3. And there was an incredible moment in that match because it was one of the best Rumbles I'd seen where all 3 of them were kind of out towards the ropes and they all just looked at one another and they all had this like mischievous smile on their face where there's moments in sports and life, and it's true with hockey or anything else, where you're a part of something special, right? Where you can look your opponent in the eye and know that you're accomplishing something special, win or lose, right? I've felt that before, even in the American League in the finals. Like when I played in the Calder Cup finals 2 years in a row, I remember looking Tyler Bertuzzi in the eye after a whistle, and he'd just crash a net or slash me or something, and I just looked at him, and we looked at each other, and the fire of competition was right there between us, and we both smiled, right? In a moment, we probably should have slashed each other's hands off. We both smiled at one another. That's what I love. That's the compelling stuff about wrestling sports while you watch. I'd like to see something similar this year.
I also love that you gave us an awesome comparison of the Royal Rumble to the Calder Cup final. I love that you just made a connection there. Outstanding. I knew this was going to be awesome, Mike. We're going to definitely have to have you on before Elimination Chamber and WrestleMania, so I'm booking you now. Please make yourself available.
Thanks, brother.
Brother,
shout out to Chris Slammer. Yeah,
there he is, Chris Slammer, brother.
He's my guy,
dude. What's she gonna do? Hey man, I love promoting the indie scene. That's awesome. Mike McKenna joining us here on The Drop. You'll definitely be back. Thanks for this, dude. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, this is a blast, Art. I hope we can do it again, man. Thanks for having me.